Well, you did find us. Okay, welcome to the online questions about ranked choice voting that you might have missed because we ran out of time on air. We're going to pick up our conversation and ask a couple more important questions. I guess I'll just turn it over to you guys and we'll start with those questions. What do we need to cover?
Well, I think when Justin was on, he pointed out how the role of the lieutenant governor really changes. And once again, understand that clerks administer elections. That's what we do. The lieutenant governor oversees those clerks to make sure that they're abiding by election law. When an election is over, they're doing the audit work. They're asking us give us this set of ballots. Let us make sure that everything ties out. If you now turn central tabulation to the lieutenant governor's office, who oversees the lieutenant governor? And what happens when the lieutenant governor is potentially on the ballot?
It does create a problem.
Now, and in fair disclosure, people ask us that all the time as clerks because we're on the ballot. But the more you elevate it, I think the more of a conflict it really brings about.
But see, if you were on the ballot in your county elections and there were questions about it, wouldn't that kick up to the lieutenant governor's
Absolutely.
office? So what I'm hearing here is that this may actually require an election commission, which is something that doesn't exist yet, at a state level to oversee the state having to look over these state races where the lieutenant governor may be running for office. So now we've just created a whole new level of accountability. And
well, even when they're not running, there has to be another critical eye. Think of the clerks as the builders of the election, and the lieutenant governor is the building inspector. If the lieutenant governor's office now starts becoming a contractor on site, who's going to inspect and make sure that they're doing it right?
Well, that's a very, very good question. So, Sherrie, you had some other thoughts about some of the problems that could arise from this. I'd like to explore those for a second.
So, as far as on a state level, so each of the counties, by statute, conduct a logic and accuracy test. They test the software to make sure that it's functioning properly in advance of the election, and the public's invited to come and observe and witness that logic and accuracy test. And so then that would be something, I'm not sure how that would then be elevated to the lieutenant governor's office. And then also after the election, we have a public audit and a sampling. The lieutenant governor's office gives us a batch till we have 1,000 ballots that we can actually go back and hand count to make sure they match what the tabulation or the scanners said they were. And so also the electronic voting machines in our case are audited. And so that would then be another thing that the lieutenant governor's office would have to deal with. How would that work if they have the jurisdiction and do the tabulation? And I'm not sure.
So now we've just added an election commission to oversee the lieutenant governor, and we've just added yet another batch of equipment to test things and to do audits at the state level, which I guess the election commission could cover, but that just adds to the cost that the lieutenant governor's office is going to have to add. Anything else that we need to kind of hit on while we're here, because my head's spinning?
I think you talk about the size of the election offices. Now, we've had a couple of municipalities have ranked choice voting administered, and credit to them for being willing to look into this. But keep in mind, they didn't run their elections. They contracted with Utah County, a very good election office, great professionals there. But some of our counties may not have the resources that a Utah county has. We have smaller counties. We have counties that have fewer in population than what Vineyard or Payson have.
Well, I'm thinking Dowsett County. They just barely are crossing 1,000. Are you going to contract with Dowsett County for them to do their elections?
I don't think we're allowed to.
Well, and Chad, those clerk auditors and the clerks those guys are the real heroes. They have limited resources. They work very hard. They make the elections happen in a safe, secure, and transparent method. And they do that with the help of the larger counties. But at the end of the day, they are running those elections. And I appreciate what they're doing. And the more consistency we can add, the better it will be for those groups.
So Curtis, I want to follow up with a question. Do you have any idea what the size of your municipalities are in Davis County? Who's your smallest municipality up there?
That would be either Sunset or South Weber. They're pretty close, depending on
And they're
building
about
permits.
what?
Oh, yeah. A few thousand people.
Okay, so in reality, you're saying maybe 5,000, 6,000? What's the smallest municipality in Salt Lake County?
Alta,
Oh, yeah. Well, that one would be smaller.
and maybe Brighton now, they incorporated.
Yeah, that's true. So they would probably be in that realm. But if you're talking 5,000 or 6,000 in your smallest ones, that's going to exceed the population of at least 4 or 5 of Utah's rural counties. And they're not going to have a resource short of the lieutenant governor's office to help them do something like this. And I guess that's an argument that probably needs to be covered. What would be your recommendation as county clerks going forward to the legislature? If you had the entire legislative body of the state of Utah here, what would you tell them they need to be considering before they move forward at embracing and endorsing this and putting it into code?
My first recommendation would be, look, there are a lot of opinion differing about ranked choice voting and whether it's worth it or good or bad, and there will always be differences of opinion, and that's what the legislature does, is they have to sort through all of that. So my question to them is, if in fact 6% or 5% of all races in Utah would even come under the jurisdiction of ranked choice voting, and in fact the end result changes in only 3% of those, is it worth the challenges that we've talked about for the voters, for the election administrators, for the auditing and the confidence? Is it worth the challenge of that to alter that 0.15% of final results? Is it really worth that fundamental shift to alter the look and feel of the ballot, the length of the ballot, who counts and audits the ballot? Is all of this change for the voters as well as the administrators, is all of this change worth what we're looking at, these tiny numbers? And if so, tell us clerks to do it, and we'll do it. We'll do it better than anyone else in the country, because that's just how we roll.
And I would add in, if I'm speaking to the entire legislature, give us consistency so we can give the voter consistency. If your concern is plurality, there are 29 clerks that are ready to help. Now, we may not be able to solve it to the degree that you like, but we will look through election calendars. If it is 0.15% of races, then why not have a runoff methodology? We stand ready to help solve the problem, but please tell us what that problem is. Is it plurality? Then we can help you with that. But please allow us to help you and the voters with a consistent voting method.
But in the very thing that you're saying, Curtis, there's the cost of runoffs compared to the cost of doing all the things that you talked about. And I mean, you're talking about an additional $1 million on one ballot, or possibly more in Salt Lake County. You know, if you have the current runoff, does that really? I mean, are we talking apples and oranges cost-wise? Because I know that's the thing the legislature always looks at, is what's the cost, and then you have to include the state's position in this, and there's an entire level of costs. Wouldn't runoffs be cheaper?
I think in the long term, yes. And, once again, provides the consistency for the voters. And then let's also ask the question, what is a reasonable cost for a core function of our government, which is an election method that provides confidence of the voters in who won is the one that got elected. That's a core function. So could it cost more over here? Could it cost more over there? Yes, and there's some opinion to that. But when you talk about core functions of government, that's where money is best invested, because those core functions are the bedrock, and especially elections, that we build our entire government structure off of.
Okay, so one last question in this conversation. I've got 3 of the more populous counties represented here. Where do the rural counties stand on this? Is there a position that UAC has taken? Are you guys just saying this is too much of a headache for the Wasatch Front, or is there unanimity across the state as far as clerks go? You're the boss of the clerks, so you tell me. Right now.
So the Utah Association of Counties has 28 of the 29 counties as members. We have repeatedly asked the county clerks of those 28 counties, are we okay on this ranked choice voting? What are your thoughts? Is this position accurate? Does anybody want to give it a try? And over the past 6 years now, not a single clerk has stepped forward and said, I actually think we should give it a try, or I think it's not such a big deal. So the clerks are unanimous. From the Utah Association of Counties, the clerks are unanimous.
It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much. Thanks to Justin Lee for sitting in to represent the state. There's a lot to consider here, and I hope you share this with your friends. I hope you share it with your legislator. I hope we have a good conversation about this, because things aren't always the panacea they look on the surface, and there are a lot of details here, and it looks like these people understand the details. Thanks for joining us on our online conversation, and remember, local government, where your life happens, as I always say, be involved and participate in things like the county seat. We'll see you later. Thank you for watching The County Seat. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications to keep up to date on the program and happenings around Utah.